Good morning. Welcome to Module 1 of the Leadership in Agentic AI series. This is an executive education program. That means we will not be spending time on theoretical AI principles that you could read in a textbook. What we're going to cover today is what your organization needs to understand and what it needs to decide as agentic AI moves from experiment to enterprise deployment. The question I am most frequently asked by senior leaders is some version of this. We have been using generative AI tools for a year or two now. What exactly has changed? And why does everyone keep saying this? By the end of this session, you will be able to do three things. First, articulate the precise distinction between generative AI and agentic AI, not in technical terms, in strategic terms, the kind of language you would use in a board paper or an investment committee. Second, identify the four architectural components that enable autonomous action. You do not need to build these systems, but you do need to understand what makes them capable and what makes them risky. Third, evaluate which workflows in your organization are genuine candidates for agentic transformation and which are not. This is the judgment call that separates organizations that extract value from those that accumulate cost. Let us begin with context. AI capability has evolved in three distinct generations, and most organizations are currently navigating all three simultaneously. That is one of the reasons strategy is so difficult. Predictive AI, the first generation, statistical and machine learning models that analyze historical data to forecast outcomes or classify inputs, credit scoring, demand forecasting, anomaly detection. The question it answers is, what will happen? This is mature, well-governed technology. Most large organizations have been running predictive AI for a decade or more. Generative AI, the second generation, models that produce novel content, text, code, images, audio, based on learned patterns and a human prompt. The question it answers is, create this for me. This is what most boards have been focused on since 2022. It is powerful, and the governance frameworks for it are still being established. The key characteristic: a human initiates every interaction. Agentic AI, the third generation, systems that perceive their environment, reason about the best path forward, plan a sequence of actions, and execute them using tools with varying degrees of human oversight. The question it answers is, achieve this goal. The critical distinction from everything that preceded it. The system initiates action. That shift, from a system that responds to a system that acts, is what the rest of this module is about. I want to make this contrast concrete because the abstract description does not always land with the clarity it needs to. Generative AI, the model you are already familiar with. You provide a detailed prompt. The model produces content, text, code, or images. It is a single exchange. One input, one output. Nothing happens in the world until you, as the human, take the output and act on it. Your role is that of a prompt engineer, an editor, a decision maker, and an executor. Agentic AI, the model that changes the equation. You specify a goal and set constraints. The agent plans, reasons, selects and uses tools, and acts. The interaction spans many steps. Real-world consequences follow. Emails are sent. Records are updated. APIs are called. Workflows are initiated. Your role has changed fundamentally. You are now a goal setter, a boundary setter, and an exception handler. That role change is not a minor operational detail. It is a governance shift. The implications for accountability, audit, and risk management are substantial. The banner on this slide carries the point I want you to take into every subsequent discussion today. A chatbot responds. An agent acts. That single distinction changes everything about governance, accountability, and risk. Let me give you a working definition that is precise enough to be useful, but accessible enough to use in a boardroom. An agentic AI system plans and executes multi-step tasks autonomously, using tools and external resources, with varying degrees of human oversight, to achieve a goal that a human has set. Every word in that definition is doing work. Let me unpack the four characteristics. Goal-directed. You define the destination. The agent plots the route. Traditional software does exactly what you instruct it to do, step by step. An agent interprets what you want and determines how to achieve it. That inversion from instruction to intent reshapes accountability in ways your legal, compliance, and audit functions will need to address. Autonomous. The agent fills in the gaps between steps, adapting as it encounters new information. Human oversight is a design choice, not a default. Your organization must decide, deliberately and explicitly, where checkpoints sit. If you have not made that decision, the system has made it for you. And the answer is likely no checkpoints. Tool using. Agents do not merely generate text. They call APIs, query databases, send communications, and update enterprise records. This is the characteristic that makes the governance stakes so high. A hallucination in a generative AI tool produces a wrong answer on a screen. A hallucination in an agentic AI system produces a wrong action in your systems. Multi-step. Tasks span connected sequences of actions, where each step may depend on the output of the previous one. Errors compound. An audit trail is not a compliance formality. It is the only mechanism by which your organization can reconstruct what actually happened when something goes wrong. Now that we have defined what an agent does, let us look briefly at how it does it. This is not a technical deep dive. It is an architectural literacy exercise. You cannot make sound governance or investment decisions about systems you do not understand at a structural level. There are four components that, in combination, enable autonomous action. Perception. The agent's ability to ingest and interpret inputs from its environment. Text, images, API responses, system logs, and increasingly, data from sensors and operational systems. Perception defines the scope of what the agent is aware of. Limited perception means limited and potentially dangerous situational awareness. Memory. The agent maintains context across time. Short-term memory holds the state of the current task. Long-term memory, typically implemented via vector databases, gives the agent access to accumulated knowledge, enterprise data, past interactions, domain expertise. Memory is also where data governance questions become acute. What does the agent retain? For how long? Under whose authority? Reasoning or chain of thought. The cognitive engine. The agent breaks down a complex goal into a sequence of subtasks, evaluates options at each step, and adapts its plan when it encounters errors or unexpected results. The quality of this reasoning determines the quality of the agent's decisions. It also determines how explainable those decisions are, a question your regulators will eventually ask. Tool use, actuation. The component that distinguishes agentic AI from all previous AI paradigms. The agent executes actions in the real world, calling APIs, querying and writing to databases, running code, and interacting with enterprise software. Tool use is where intent becomes consequence. It is also where the most significant failure modes reside. Before we move to the case study, I want to give you a framework that I find consistently useful in conversations with boards and investment committees. We tend to talk about AI as a single category. It is not. There are at least three distinct deployment categories, each with different system roles, different human roles, and critically, different governance requirements. Conflating them leads to misallocated capital and inadequate risk frameworks. Assisted AI. The system provides recommendations, surfaces insights, or flags anomalies. The human executes the action. The decision authority remains entirely with the human. Your fraud detection system. Your clinical decision support tool. Your supply chain optimization dashboard. These are assisted AI. Governance is relatively well understood. Generative AI. The system produces draft content based on a human prompt. The human reviews and approves. The human is functioning as an editor. Decision authority is shared, but the human retains final say before any output has an effect. Governance frameworks here are still evolving, but the loop is short and the human remains in it. Agentic AI. The system perceives its environment, reasons about the optimal path, executes multi-step workflows, and adapts autonomously. The human sets goals and manages exceptions. The human is out of the loop for most of the execution. Decision authority has been substantially delegated to the system. That final point is not a footnote. You cannot govern an agentic system using assisted AI frameworks. The risk profile is categorically different. The accountability questions are different. The audit requirements are different. If your organization is deploying agentic AI under the governance structures you built for predictive or generative AI, that is a material risk gap. Let us look at a concrete example of how this shift from research capability to enterprise deployment has played out at scale. I have chosen Google, DeepMind, and Vertex AI not because Google is the only player, but because this particular trajectory from AlphaFold to Vertex AI Agent Builder illustrates the progression we have just been discussing with unusual clarity. Phase 1. AlphaFold, the precursor. AlphaFold solved the protein folding problem. That is a scientific achievement of the first order, and it demonstrated something important. AI was no longer limited to pattern recognition on historical data. It could engage in structured, deep problem-solving to reach conclusions that human researchers had spent decades pursuing. The governance implications of AlphaFold were largely contained to the scientific community. The system produced outputs. Researchers evaluated them. The loop remained human-controlled. Phase 2. Vertex AI Agent Builder, the enterprise transition. Vertex AI Agent Builder represents the translation of that capability into enterprise infrastructure. Organizations can now build, deploy, and manage agents that interact directly with live business data. ERP systems, CRM platforms, operational databases, and execute real business actions autonomously. The governance implications are not contained. The loop is not automatically human-controlled. The enterprise shift described on this slide, from answering questions to executing workflows, from isolated models to integrated systems, from human prompting to goal specification, is precisely the shift that your risk function, your legal counsel, and your board need to understand. The central question for this discussion is, how does autonomous execution change the value proposition in your industry? I want to focus the conversation on 3 dimensions. Defining autonomy. What does autonomous actually mean in a highly regulated industry? In financial services, in healthcare, in infrastructure. The word autonomous is not neutral. It carries regulatory weight. Before your organization deploys agentic AI, you need a precise, documented definition of what level of autonomy you are authorizing, in which contexts, and under what conditions human override is mandatory. Liability and risk. When an autonomous agent makes a poor decision, and at sufficient scale it will, where does the liability reside? With the technology vendor? With the business unit that deployed the system? With the individual who set the objective? With a board that approved the investment? These questions do not have settled answers in most jurisdictions. That uncertainty is itself a risk that boards should be pricing. Board communication. What does your board need to understand about this shift? In my experience, boards are frequently presented with AI strategy decks that focus on capability and upside. The conversations about accountability structures, audit trail requirements, and exception handling protocols happen much later, often after an incident has already occurred. The question to take back to your board is not, should we adopt agentic AI? It is, what governance structures need to be in place before we do? Let me close with the 3 takeaways that I want you to carry from this session. First, the paradigm has shifted from prompt engineering to goal specification. The mental model that most organizations built around generative AI where success depended on crafting better prompts, is no longer the right model for agentic systems. You are now specifying objectives, setting boundaries, and managing systems that act on your behalf. The leadership skill required is different, and most organizations have not yet developed it. Second, true autonomy requires all four components to work together: perception, memory, reasoning, and tool use. A system that lacks robust perception will act on incomplete information. A system with poor memory will lose context across steps. A system with weak reasoning will make poor decisions. A system with unconstrained tool use will execute those poor decisions in your production environment. Understanding which components are mature and which are not is a precondition for responsible deployment. Third, not all workflows require agents. The deployment taxonomy we covered is not a hierarchy in which agentic AI is always the superior option. It is a classification framework. Deploying agentic AI to a workflow that does not require autonomous multi-step reasoning is not a strategy. It is cost with added risk. Understanding the taxonomy and applying it with discipline is how you generate return on your AI investment. Individual reflection. Before we close, take 5 minutes with a reflection prompt on the slide. Identify one workflow within your own department that is currently ripe for agentic transformation. Be specific about which capabilities, reasoning, tool use, memory, would be required to make it work. And be equally specific about what the governance conditions for deployment would need to be. These can be used as inputs to your own planning. Module 2 will give you the governance and architecture frameworks to act on them. Thank you. I look forward to continuing this in Module 2.